Here are some movie recommendations inspired by Taylor Swift's new album, The Life of a Showgirl. Disclaimer, I only listened to the album one time and haven't read anything or watched any videos, so I don't know what people are saying about it and don't know any of the lore or Easter eggs. These are just the first movies that popped into my head for each song. But first, I guess I should change my background to orange so people don't get the wrong idea. Starting with track 1, The Fate of Ophelia, naturally made me think of Hamlet, but specifically the one starring Ethan Hawke. And as the song went on, I realized it's perfect because the lyrics include nods to Shakespeare, but also modern phrases. So it's like she's blending together new and old language, and this movie takes Hamlet and moves it to a modern time and setting, blending together old and new. I'm sure most people will say Cleopatra for this one, but Elizabeth Taylor initially made me think of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But as it went on, I started thinking of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. But the Cartier lyric made me land on Gentlemen Prefer Blondes because diamonds are a girl's best friend. If I'm being completely transparent, the first movie that popped into my head during Opalite was Uncut Gems because of the opal in that movie, but that doesn't fit the song at all. But when I pay attention to the lyrics, it makes me think of the Broken Hearts Gallery, because the protagonist in this movie has a bad habit of missing lovers past, and the song also conveys this idea of going through heartbreak and hurdles and trying to create your own happiness before finally meeting someone good, and I think this movie fits that vibe. Father figure, of course, made me think of The Godfather, especially with the lines, "I protect the family and sleep with the fishes." Eldest daughter made me think of 10 Things I Hate About You, not just because Kat is the eldest daughter, but because she acts like she's not interested in love and develops a hardened facade to protect herself, and that's how I interpreted the song. Also, going back to what I said earlier about Shakespeare and blending old and new, this movie is a modernized version of Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew, and this song also calls to mind Honora, because that's another movie where it feels like the woman acts tough and doesn't allow herself to become vulnerable as a way to shield herself from getting hurt. Ruin the Friendship reminds me of Love, Rosie because it paints a picture of this friends to lovers trope with the line, "Staying friends is safe doesn't mean you should," and it seems like a friendship that starts in high school with the mention of prom and don't make it awkward in second period. And the lyric, "When I left school I lost track of you," really conveys this idea of friends who drift apart after high school, and there's also this idea of wanting to be together when they're dating someone else. Actually, Romantic portrays a one-sided conflict where she lives rent-free in someone's head and that person can't stand her even though she doesn't think about them that much. And that reminds me of Amadeus and the Neon Demon. Wishlist makes me think of Materialist because she's singing about how people want all these fancy things, but she just wants this person. And the protagonist in this movie could have a lavish lifestyle with this one guy, or she could be with a man who doesn't have much money. And the chorus where she talks about having kids who look like you reminds me of the line from the movie, "When I see your face, I see wrinkles, gray hair, and children that look like you." Wood references a bunch of superstitions, but when I first heard it, my takeaway was that it sounds like it's about someone who dated a bunch of underwhelming people and then finally found someone who's good in bed. But I could be wrong. That was just my interpretation because there are a lot of innuendos. So this reminds me of What's Your Number? Because the protagonist in this movie reads something about how 96% of women who've slept with 20 or more people are unlikely to find a husband, and she kind of takes that to heart. So that feels like it ties in with the superstition element and the raunchy or risque undertones of the song. Cancelled initially made me think of Macbeth because of the line, "Something wicked this way comes," but the idea of being cancelled and being friends with people who've also been cancelled makes me think of Not Okay, Ingrid Goes West, and Do Revenge. But the fact that she brings up Gucci and depicts this sort of glamorous and scandalous lifestyle makes me think of The Bling Ring most of all. Honey is about how when people would call her honey or sweetheart, they meant it in a negative or passive-aggressive way, and now she found someone who redefines those words so she can see them in a positive light, which is really specific, so these might not be the best examples, but it kind of reminds me of Easy A because Olive is called all these awful names, and she chooses to embrace it and own those labels, and that's what eventually opens her up to a genuine romantic connection. And it reminds me of Silver Linings Playbook because these characters are called crazy in a negative way, but then they eventually start using the word in a more endearing way, like when Pat says, "The only way you can beat my crazy was by doing something crazy yourself." I'm aware those are both instances of redefining words that are already negative, but I'm running on 3 hours of sleep, so give me a break. And last but not least, obviously when I first heard the title, The Life of a Showgirl, it made me think of The Last Showgirl and Showgirls. But when I first listened to the title track, my mind immediately went to All About Eve. This song just screams All About Eve to me. Someone please ask Taylor Swift if that movie was an inspiration for the song, because if she says no, I will genuinely be shocked. And as a bonus, 10 more movies that just came to mind from the overall vibe of the album are Cabaret, Moulin Rouge, Sunset Boulevard, Chicago, Lola, Ball of Fire, Babylon, Perfect Blue, Almost Famous, and all that jazz. But comment and let me know which movies you'd associate with this album, or let me know your thoughts on the album, or tell me how your day's going. I don't know.